Monk is going to be taken away here. Nara as well will be thrown away from Choke. Of course, we did see that last game from FM.
Yeah, and this time FM banning out Nara, of course, is because of the first pick potential, so that's why we won't be seeing Nara. It's kind of just as you'd expect from this, but yeah, let's take a look at the next couple of bans. We have been expecting a lot of top and jungle focus.
Yeah, and talking about top and jungle, here's the Irelia taken away by Choke, and likewise the jungle ban here from Warwick. So once again, it's FM taking away these meta picks.
Yeah, indeed, and another pick from the last game getting banned out this time by Choke.
Yeah, Jarvan comes out here as their final ban, and take a look at this one, Stress. Veigar is going to be the final ban out here from FM, so fearing that from Zodiac as we saw that in Game 1.
This is going to leave his Morgana available. What else is available for a first pick here? When you look across the board, the Xerath that has been highly contested. We saw Choke first pick that earlier on in the day. Could see that again coming back from game number 1. Lee Sin would be another pick for these two junglers that we have seen a lot of prominence on. So there's a lot still available here. And then this would be another champion if they do indeed lock it in.
Yeah, we have to see what Choke really want to prioritize here. But talking about priority, FM have a very interesting picking order because they usually like to pick their jungler last with no real intention to do something crazy. So we'll see if they do something different this time, but you know, I'm not expecting something out of this world, but it'd be nice to see it. However, first pick will be that Pantheon coming in from Choke Gaming.
And we saw Lasagna on Pantheon in game 1 of the series, comboing the damage from the Pantheon ult, the mobility, with that Veigar down in the bottom lane. I wonder whether they'll look for a similar setup, but this time using the Morgana. We know how good Zodiac is on those more obscure champions. He looked a little lackluster on a more standard champion, somebody that had that sustain. So I kind of wonder whether Zodiac is going to go meta or whether he's going to default back to his comfortable picks.
Maybe. I mean, when you basically hand him his Morgana on a silver platter, it's difficult to say no. And taking away the Veigar, which is his pocket pick from game 1, yes, they're fearing it, but we've also talked about how pocket picks work and whether they work out in a prolonged series. But regardless, we do have the Ezreal coming out here alongside the Xerath from FM.
So we saw Ezreal last game out of Samwise. Xerath is just kind of a common champion that is a running theme throughout this entire series, but Samwise Ezreal in the last game kind of opted for a mix between the blue build and a regular Ezreal build, going for the Muramana and a Trinity Force. And I felt like at times Samwise was being overly aggressive and didn't have the Iceborne Gauntlet to actually keep himself alive. That's a large part of the blue build, that he was going for later game damage using the Blade of the Ruined King, the Muramana. But I honestly feel like to do that again would be a little bit of a risk. It does affect Ezreal's early game when you go for a stacking item like that. So obviously it's a comfortable champion. We know it's one of his most played. First picking it though for FM, that's a big statement that they thought it worked out that well for him.
Choke taking their time with these next two picks, and they may even respond to that Ezreal pick right here, as you were just talking about, Stress, with the Jinx now coming in for Chewed Up, and there's the Morgana for Zodiac.
Yeah, everybody on the analyst desk last game was kind of saying, why didn't Zodiac pick Morgana? It was available. Everything looked like it could have been good for Morgana. This time you're going to see it. There's that extra catch potential now between Lasagna and Zodiac, as you're going to have that synergy. So look for a lot of bot lane emphasis once again now that Choke are on the blue side.
So FM themselves have a lot of room to look for the next couple of picks here. We did of course see that Jarvan-Gnar combination last game, Gnar being taken away, and indeed Jarvan by Choke Gaming means we won't be seeing the same thing this time around. Will
we see Dan opt for his Lee Sin? Jarvan banned away. I know he won't be too happy about that one, but Pantheon is a very strong jungler right now to play into. You have to pick something that's equally strong in the early game, or you're going to fall behind. So we're looking probably for support. Sona being available is an option. Against Morgana, it's one of those kind of lanes where it's just down to how the early game goes. Janna is another option.
Yeah, Janna comes in here, that great disengage as well, on top of the Xin Zhao, which again can be used for disengage, using of course that ultimate coming in here. And we have seen builds before in this series where you will go for that Devourer and do all of that extra damage. This is of course 4.20 on the patch, so it is the crazy damage you're getting from that Devourer upgrade.
Yeah, indeed, and take a look at one thing FM are setting up very well, and it's pretty much the way 420 has been set up. They've got a lot of poke and a lot of disengage as well. Ezreal, Xerath, they're going to be able to zone around a dragon very well. Then you put Janna and Xin Zhao in there to disengage everything from a fight, apart from obviously the one target. FM have got a a fairly good composition when it comes to controlling Dragon.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what FM do to round out their roster here, but Choke are about to do the same thing, and they do lock in the Yorick once again from that game 1, and here comes the Lux for the mid lane for Alchemist.
So we saw Dr. Mundo as a pick into Yorick. It worked out actually not too badly for FM, just the rest of the lanes didn't quite go as they planned, and now Lux is a champion that Power of Evil played over in IEM San Jose against Cloud9. It didn't work out all that well for him, but a reminder that Lux did get a couple of minor buffs, now has AP scaling on her passive. Lux is a champion that is starting to see a lot of play up against champions like Xerath who like to sit back. Lux likes to do the same. A lot of poke, a lot of catch, and you can see Choke right the way down the line going for that catch potential.
Yeah, it's funny the way we talk about Lux because it's like, oh, these are recent changes, right? But like Lux, this was changed a long time ago, but no one's ever played Lux since then. And now this is relevant because Lux is finally coming back into the mid lane. But let's see what FM do to round out their roster here. And it looks like could be Maokai. Doesn't look like they have any intention of changing here, so they put that into the top lane. So they have a little bit of everything here. Of course, that long-range poke, the control, and control seems to be what FM are aiming for.
Okay, so FM putting Maokai in this matchup rather than the Dr. Mundo says it's going to be a very similar lane when it comes to actually how the laning phase plays out, but Maokai should have a lot more effect in the earlier game. He doesn't need to get that tankiness to actually be effective. Ultimate does a great job. You can lock somebody down as well.
Yes, indeed. So the players are just filing back out, and apparently someone has a small technical issue, but we should get that resolved. But as we look down the lineups as well, of course, we talked about how FM are going into this game. When we get the picks up, we'll, of course, go through Choke and how they want to be approaching this one as well. But this is now one-on-one. This is essentially now a best-of-3 as we get into this. But both of the teams are warmed up into this series, and this is opening up to be a longer series as well, something that neither team are really used to as we get into this tournament.
Yeah, and again, the players just having a few issues swapping around there, so we're just making sure everybody is set up pretty well there. So that is the important thing. And they were joking around that, yeah, Mao AD carry, not exactly what you want. So, right, as we get the players back into the game and get things underway, Choke are looking for a lot of catch potential from their comp. There's a lot of disengage there, though, from FM eSports. And as we go through very quickly through picks and bans, you have to wonder, FM's problem thus far in both games, not just the first one, was that they were getting caught. So Choke right now maybe have a composition that will really exploit the weakness of FM.
Yeah, it's very possible. Again, we're seeing this Yorick as well, and while there's nothing here that will maybe throw him off kilter in the same way that the Veigar did, we have the Lux coming out here, which is something a little bit different to play around. Likewise, the Yorick may have had some time to adapt to it, but again, it was something that Tundra wasn't super used to playing against and didn't even opt towards the Mundo this time around, even knowing the matchup would work in his favor if it went exactly the way it did in Game 1.
Yeah, that top lane is going to be a matchup that we'll have to look at and see exactly how it goes. But another side to what Choke have is they've got good catch potential on one person, but then the follow-up from that, you look at the Pantheon ult, you look at the Lux Laser, the Super Mega Death Rocket, and even Soul Shackles if you're in range. There's a lot of kind of AoE teamfight potential to clean up at the end of it. So FM have to be very careful of the tail end teamfight burst that Choke have. It's not going to be all up front all of the time, and that is something that you can get lulled a little bit into a false sense of security with. Yeah,
and Jinx coming in here. Don't see a lot of Jinx, honestly, compared to kind of the top AD carries that we've been seeing so far in the Four Nations, at least. But you think to Giants, of course, Adri liked himself some Jinx. We've seen this in the expansion tournament. We've seen this in all of the other tournaments being played on 4.2. Well, and now we're seeing it here in the finals. So you can see that these two teams have been actually holding a lot of these picks back, because this is not what they've been necessarily using all the way up until this point.
Yeah, that's very true. And speaking of Jinx, especially into Ezreal, Jinx is going to scale very well, as she always does. But one of the big strengths that you have in this matchup is they're only really going to be in a position to get poked by Samwise when Zodiac goes for a Dark Binding. Other than that, they should be behind their minion wave. There's not going to be all that much chance to harass down. So it's one of those lanes that it's all on Zodiac's Dark Bindings, and if there's one thing we know Zodiac is very comfortable with, it's landing Dark Bindings on Morgana.
Absolutely. Like, you think back to yesterday, those Dark Bindings were literally landing like pretty much 80% of the time, and those was usually result in a kill. And we've seen literally just from this series as well, if you've only seen this series, how many kills that Zodiac has set up for his team. And the case in point, of course, was the Veigar. We'll see if he can replicate that success on Morgana, one of his prized champions. But either way, Stress, make sure that you guys at home hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag L4N. Join the conversation and tell us your thoughts on how this one's going to go, because this series is long from over.
It is. Now, I'm glad we're at a 1-1 standpoint now, because it means we're definitely going to 4 games, and that means we are in for a treat. And that is the prize for all our teams, the awesome 4 Nations trophy. But that'll be the prize for whoever wins all of the remaining games.
Yeah, and the teams are ready to get out of the gate into the Summoner's Rift. So once again, swapping up these sides, Choke Gaming and FM eSports are ready to do battle in this completely evened up series here in the grand finals of 4 Nations. The next win will put heavy pressure on the opposing team to try and come back into this series.
Yeah, indeed. Now, level 1's starting out. Where are we? We saw the group around top jungle for FM last time. Choke are looking to do a very similar thing.
And once again, Dan will be getting caught out here. Here comes the light binding, follows with the damage, and again, here comes the dark binding on top of that. Both of the bindings come through, and that results in a dead Dan for first blood coming in for Choke. And he will continue the aggression, the 3-man push here into the jungle. There is some reactionary play from FM as Tundra closes in from the top side, but they won't be going all in on this one. They will literally just be putting out these wards and trying to do what they can. So the initial wards go down, and they will be able to get that early information onto FM.
Yeah, that was just FM kind of, I guess, Choke reading what FM did in the last series, or the game 1 of the day, actually, if we think all the way back. And honestly, it's again a jungler kind of just being in the wrong position and getting caught at the level 1. So it's not the best start for Dan. That's already given the Rangers Trailblazer over to Lasagna, and that's a massive amount of damage difference now.
So take a look at Tundra right now. He's actually setting up saplings inside his own jungle to try and take this camp as fast as possible. And now that you can see the AoE, he'll be able to actually probably hit level 2 off the back of this. And this is not something you see all the time, but as you can see on your screen right now, FM are contesting away these Krugs, and while they take away the small Krug, they're not able to get all the experience away from this one. So FM, pretty successful engage.
Yeah, it's a mirror of what happened in game 1 of the day, because if you remember, it was Choke invading onto that first camp start for FM. So what will we see as the next move out of FM? Because the next thing after that was a jungler ganking a lane at level 2, and didn't quite land the stun, and I think Dan's just going to back away because of it.
Yeah, Eye of Destruction is not enough for Dan to say I'm going to go for this engage, but what he will do is head straight into this opposing jungle and take away this red buff. He hasn't taken either of his own buffs at this stage. And now that Lasagna's coming through, this is going to go down to the wire. Dan is very low as well, and Lasagna will know he's here. He actually takes it away, and Dan will just get taken out. In fact, he flashes away. Eye of Destruction will be flashed over by Lasagna, and he just has to audacious charge back into the Pantheon, and he will be taken down. Both kills on Dan.
From bad to worse here for Dan. Xin Zhao takes so much damage in the early jungle, and that moment of hesitation of thinking about going mid and then not committing really punishes him, because Lasagna, they knew he'd be at his red buff by then, or at least around the area. You can kind of tell that something was up there, and Lasagna is now so far ahead. Not only did he have that early ranges, now he's got 2 kills on potentially the best non-Warwick jungler on 420.
So Dan here has spotted out Lasagna as he heads around the wall. And of course, Chriso will be coming through to assist his jungler, who is still level 2, but in the bot lane, Zodiac is dropping low. The exhaust did come out as well and gets tagged by a Mystic Shot on the way out as Samwise tags him. But once again, Lasagna is pushing in, and this may be to his detriment as Samwise comes in from the bottom lane, but maybe taken out himself. Eye of Destruction comes out, followed through by the Dark Binding, trying to chase them down. Again, the Mystic Shot goes awry, and Chewed-Up will respond with a couple of auto attacks himself. So trades back and forth, but it seems like zone control has been established by FM, just allowing Dan to get his initial buffs.
They're having to cover so much for Dan at this point in the game that it's actually causing them to spend so much time out of lane right now. Choke are still up from those 2 kills, but right now Dan is so far behind. He's 1 CS at nearly 4.5 minutes into this game. Finally doubles his CS count.
Gets in with 3 CS, now going on to 4. This is not very interesting play-by-play, but what is the middle lane right now between Chriso and Alchemist. We mentioned it during Champions Select Stress, but Lux now coming back into the meta. Seen it a couple times in San Jose, but now is the time where we're going to be seeing in the 4 Nations. I'm taking a look at the top lane. Tundra actually swapping away from the Mundo in the first game, which actually was very successful against Numlock's Yorick. And I'll see how this fares in this matchup. Tundra definitely feeling the pinch on his mana and health bar.
So, to go back a little bit to that mid lane, the additional scaling on Lux's passive is going to affect it later and later into the game. The passive itself actually makes Lux fairly difficult to deal with in the mid lane. If you start getting hit by 1 or 2 of her abilities, it's a lot of extra damage. And speaking of extra damage, that Rangers Trailblazer on Lasagna has been doing so much work right now, and he's about to try and put it to use, but Tundra's managed to shove it a little bit away, and that's going to open this up. Just waiting on Lasagna's go here. But is it too late?
It may be, and it looks like Lasagna feels the same way, as Tundra did think about recalling, but actually stays and sticks around, maybe just trying to bait him in as Dan is coming back from base. But Dan from FM on Xin Zhao is only level 3. Chriso as well will put a ward into his own jungler's Bramble back camp here just to allow him to get this one. And this is still the very first red buff of the game, so in terms of jungle timings, it is way off.
Yeah, Dan hasn't exactly had the easiest start to this game, I think would be an understatement. He has finally got his Rangers Trailblazer, but that's a good 4 minutes later than Choke managed to get theirs on Lasagna. And this bottom lane has, it started out to go in favor of Samwise. He had a little CS lead, but the amount of time he had to spend up around the blue buff with Billy Fufu, they took too much damage and came back to lane without real sustain. And that allows Jinx to just sit back, farm up, and they're shoving into lane because they know how far back Dan is. Dan's not really able to gank very easily, even though there are no real wards bottom lane.
So the first back here by DX Alchemist, and take a look at this. He's actually opted towards the Medjais now. And remember, this is the new Medjais where he will start with 5 stacks here, but if you get killed, then it is no longer efficient. But it actually starts off being efficient now.
So this is a departure to what Tower of Evil was building first on Lux. He was opting for a tier build, used that to stack up later and later into the game. As you said, Medjais now starts with stacks, and it's an indicator that Alchemist is going to play fairly defensively once we start getting into fights. You get so many stacks just from throwing the shield out onto your opponents that the assists just take up and up and up. And speaking of fights, this could be the first big fight of the game, as a lot of members are starting to focus around this dragon area, but Choke don't have that much damage to do it all that quickly. And Dan has actually gone onto his Grok camp. They don't even want to fight this. Yep,
FM are just not interested. The first dragon of the game, 8% boost to that AP and AD will be going over to Choke.
And the reason they don't want to fight it is because Chriso was out of lane. A 4v3 means they have to give the dragon uncontested, and that is not a good position for FM to be in. They're already down in gold, now they're down on stats as well.
Yeah, and usually if you are going to let that go away, then you need to trade something for it, and they weren't able to take a tower away from that. They were simply outpositioned, and FM cannot let these types of objectives slip. We said last game, yes, they won, but it wasn't pretty. They did get called out, they did make some questionable decisions, and that will be easily punished by the other team. That seems to be the recurring theme in all of these games. Both of the teams will make one positional misplay, and the other team is so fast to capitalize on it.
The problem is FM couldn't capitalize on anything there. Their composition's bread and butter should be around dragon fights. They should be poking people down and setting up the fights for themselves, but with Chriso not there, with Dan behind, they didn't want to engage on that. And really, if you can't make the comp work up to how it's meant to, FM really can't get going in this game early on.
And there's a big 6-minute gap before they can utilize that type of playstyle again. And in this game, they will just have to wait it out, try and farm up. But as you look down the CS disparities, Choke Gaming are ahead in CS in every single lane, in every single category, on every single player, plus they're 2 kills ahead, and you can see that resulted in the gold here, 1,500 gold ahead at only the 9-minute mark.
It's somewhat to be expected in the top lane that there'd be maybe a little bit of CS disparity in the favor of Yorick, mainly because of how he's a lane bully, but this mid lane, I guess, should be fairly even by the fact they're going to be defensive. Bottom lane, however, is all affected by the amount of time that they had to spend with Dan. So Choke have really utilized that early start very well. They got that early pick onto Dan, and they are punishing him heavily. And Dan has opted to try and get himself into this game by getting into lane and getting around his jungle fast. He's using the mobility boots. On the other side, once again, we're seeing Lasagna with the Brutalizer going towards Warrior. He wants extra damage, and that'll punish Dan even harder if he finds him.
Yep. Again, the Warrior enchantment, nothing new there. Most likely we'll be seeing Dan going, of course, for his Devourer enchantment when he accrues the gold. Now heading into the jungle, we'll be donating away this blue buff. And the laser was a little bit early from Alchemist, and that will just be helping Chriso and Dan take this one down. Probably a little bit thrown off by the timings as well, considering this is 10 minutes 20 instead of 7 minutes 20.
That was what I was going to say. He's a little thrown off because of how much they've actually affected Dan's jungle route. But you can tell that Alchemist had the read on roughly when it was, knew that Xerath not in lane. It's just Alchemist having a good read on the jungle timings here from Dan. Samwise has opted for the Muramana, or Manamune for now. I wonder whether he'll go for that extra mobility, the extra poke that you're going to be able to see setup fights with the Glacial Shroud into the Iceborne Gauntlet again. I would like to see that just from a mobility standpoint. It helps him not get caught quite a lot, because if you can slow the opponents, they're going to be in less chance of getting hit by, you know, a stray light binding or something like that.
Right. I mean, last game he went for this very funky build where he went for the Muramana, or the Mana Moon rather, and into the Muramana, and then went with the Triforce. And we were talking over at the analyst desk because it was an interesting choice, and couple that with his questionable decision in a couple of team fights, it meant that the game wasn't as slick as it could have been from FM.
Yeah, it's extra disengage as well. Right. If you can start heading backwards, start a Mystic Shot, slow the enemies. Oh, Pantheon ult into the middle lane.
Yeah, but right into Chris's dropping ult, but it doesn't matter because Alchemist comes in with the final spark. Rocket flies through, and will be flying off the map, going to places unknown.
Yeah, parts unknown. But, okay, so there is exactly what Choke want to do with their composition. They want to get a pick, use the globals, use the long range to their advantage. Lasagna actually kind of haphazardly ulted into middle lane. Didn't even need to be in the right spot for it. And just gets the kill from it. That's how good this catch potential out of Choke is going to be until FM can start grouping. A minute and a half until the next dragon. FM have to pressure the next dragon out.
Yeah, giving up 2 dragons is not necessarily optimal. You definitely need to be trading objectives away. Now into the jungle, we can see this buddy system going up. We do have Lasagna and Alchemist looking to close in here onto Tundra. But unknown to them is Dan hovering around the side. It could be a very risky dive if they choose to go all in here with Dan off to the side. He will be able to disrupt them with his Crescent Sweep. And as he shows us face, they decide better of going for that all-in aggression. However, that has allowed Chriso to push in the middle lane and grab a small CS advantage onto Alchemist once he clears this minion wave up.
Yeah, and when he actually shoves that wave in, it should set up the dragon fight a little bit better now that mid is pushing, but I believe they've actually found Lux. Yeah,
Lux has been called out here. Eye of Destruction comes out, and that is another, well, the first pick coming by FM, but another pick in this game where someone is just out of position and punished by the opposing team.
Now FM can play the objective game. Chriso had already shoved mid up. You can see the amount of damage that Dan can do even just from after being behind, just from the Rangers alone. I wonder, he's got a long sword. It devours his 2 daggers,
correct,
if I'm not mistaken. So he's opting for not for the attack speed. He's opting for extra damage, and it's either something like another item, like a Hex Trinket to keep himself alive and delaying the enchantment, or he's going for a warrior, which isn't exactly standard on that Xin chat.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Xinjiao players will say, well, I have the battle cry on my W, increasing my attack speed. Why not get the extra healing, right? It synergizes with the kit. So
Exactly.
in the bot lane, Samwise is clearing away all of these minions and is definitely keeping up on farm, but is still behind of Chewed Up. At this stage in the game, proportionally not too bad, but you can see how much of a slower game this has been in comparison to every other game, not only in this series, but in this tournament stress. Both teams playing pretty conservatively in this game. Only 4 kills in 14 minutes, a far cry from 50 in 30 minutes.
FM are a lot more controlled around this dragon now, though. They're in position to actually contest and poke down Zodiac and Shoot Up. They're already starting to try and get Samwise around that corner. He's got to beat Zodiac before he can actually edge him off like this. This is what FM didn't want to happen, because now they're split away and they have to kind of attack from two sides. FM just need to continue to poke through, but they're just going to control the vision for now. And they know there's no real reason to take Dragon right this instant, and without Choke pressuring that themselves, it's not a highly contested objective right this split second. They're just going to go back to farming.
FM are looking a lot more focused here though, Stress, because Lasagna last game, he had huge control over Dan's crabs, but this time Dan is taking away those crabs for that movement speed shrine, so they're able to actually get around that area and put down that vision control.
Yeah, they're using the best that they've got on vision control around objectives.
So in this mid lane, Alchemist will be farming away. Now looking towards the Morella Nomicon, has the Fiend's Codex and the Forbidden Idol. So we'll be looking for that item next for that early game boost. But now Dragon is still the objective here, but both teams thought about it, went towards it, tried to get that control, and they kind of wandered off again and did the housekeeping things of taking the Dragon, taking the buffs.
So Dan has somewhat settled into this game now. He is still behind gold-wise in that jungle role, but he's certainly nowhere near as under pressure as he was early on in this game. He's started to actually find his grounding, and a lot of Lasagna's threat with damage from the early game gank potential, while it hasn't gone, it's now not quite as prevalent as perhaps it was when Dan had to just stay in his own jungle and sit back. So Choke have to play a little bit more carefully even though they're ahead. FM have closed the gold gap, and that's something that's actually fairly difficult to do on 420, is when you have a gold gap, you don't have that added global gold that Dragon used to give. This is before the addition of the extra global gold on the towers, so FM aren't in too rough of a situation now. They just can't get caught, and they cannot give away more dragons.
Yeah, I mean, like, the case study is Cloud9 when we saw them playing in San Jose, where they were trading away dragons but picking up objectives, and they actually were not only keeping up in gold, but then started to edge ahead because they denied the 5th dragon and then took that dragon and then were able just to turn around the game. So Dragon's not the all BNs and ends all, but the bottom turret and objectives definitely are.
Yes, indeed. Top lane has been a quiet affair, though, as we look at Tundra and Numlocked, but it's the team fight that both of these top laners are really going to have an impact on. Jinx is a lot better when you can bring her back with the Yorick than the Corki was, and Corki did exceptionally well when being brought back by Yorick in game number 1. So in this game, Chewed Up, when he's got that the Ghost from Numlocked, is going to be able to do so much damage in fights if they take the right fights. The problem they've got is FM have a great composition for poking and then engaging after.
Yeah, and here we go. Again, the vision control, but here comes the man drop from Lasagna. We'll be tagging down, getting the slow down. Here's the W for the stun as well. Follows up with the ultimate. The final spark will not be picking up the kill, but the one-on-one between these junglers, Lasagna comes out on top.
And Lasagna just knew exactly where Dan was, ult on top of him, and has so much damage.
Oh, happy feed. Oh, will be dodging the last ultimate charge and gets away with it, but needs to get all of the passive charges up so he doesn't get taken out. This is damage control as we see the super mega death rocket coming across onto Samwise, and Zodiac is so incredibly low. Oh, here comes the end ultimate, tags Lasagna, is literally inches away from death.
Oh my goodness, FM just haven't been able to control Dragon at all in this game, and as we head towards the 20-minute mark, that is 2 going in favor of Choke. So the problem with that is FM are not getting enough around the map to really contest with these dragons that Choke are picking up. They need to start getting a little bit more focus on turrets. It's been a good 5 minutes since they even pressured out that middle lane turret, and Choke evened that up with bottom as that happens. So right now, the early game pressure that Choke put on Dan is once again rearing its head.
So now taking a step back here, we can see a lot of big items have been picked up all across the board from both of these teams. The Rod of Ages now by Tundra got that first big item, been farming pretty well as well against his counterpart of Numlocked, and likewise in the middle lane got that Athenes and Holy Grail on the side of FM to Chriso, and of course the needlessly large Rod looking for his next big item. But as we head into the top lane, take a look at Zodiac sitting in the wings here. And also, his counterpart of Billy is sitting behind the turret of Tundra. So both supports are here, and usually at this point you would expect both of those supports to be junglers.
Yeah, you would, but the other added hidden, champion that isn't quite there, Pantheon. But look, he's setting up in top side of jungle. He's looking to maybe ult from Gromp when he starts moving up after the camp. It's a potential that FM kind of understand is in play. He's even heading up there now, just running into the lane. So Tundra has to be careful. He's got to back away from this. Otherwise, they're going to be forced to use at least the Monsoon from Billy Fufu to keep them alive. So this is a long game. It's a long gank right now.
Oh, I believe Zodiac just got caught out there by the sapling as it came across, but he's actually just going to stick around because Lasagna is there as well. So while they know the support is there, they don't know the location of the jungler.
But mid lane, Lux did push up a fair amount, and Choke had played this so slowly that FM was starting to wonder where everybody is. This makes a lot more sense out of Choke, though.
Yeah, Choke just moved into the top lane and just Alchemist actually heads up into the top river to assist his team, ready with the final spark, and that, unfortunately for FM, meant that their gank in the middle lane wasn't able to be fully executed. Samwise this time takes away the red buff here, will be claiming that small objective, but that is in exchange for the top turret.
Oh, they pinged onto Lux. The problem is Lux has her ultimate available and can clear the wave. One of the reasons why FM didn't really get anything from that is because Jinx had shoved bottom up so far that there was no pressure to hit on the bottom tower. Middle lane is too easy to clear and now has a shield as well. But here comes the Pantheon ultimate.
Skyfall comes down, and that is a caught and dead Samwise. CC from left and right, and he goes down.
Didn't even get an assist for Pantheon on that. That's how fast Samwise got blown up completely there. That's going to open up the mid lane turret as well. Choke have got an insanely strong pick comp for this point in the game. And honestly, with Jinx as well, they can start shoving towers.
Oh, Lasagna's going deep though, but FM have huge amounts of disengage. Is it going to be enough though? Because Chriso is out of mana, but the teleport now comes in. Tundra also heads into the fight, but decides to cancel it at the last moment. The fight did not erupt, so with a smart cancel, so we have the cooldown faster than Numlocked.
A lot of summoners burned though a good 3 flashes or 2 flashes on the side of FM. They want to push this turret. I don't know whether they can actually continue to push this.
Yeah, and here's the engage by Dan though. He just executes himself in the middle of the team and will just simply drop. But the ultimates from Chriso not quite enough to finish off Chewed Up, but it is enough to deter them from the turret.
Yeah, I mean, it was enough to deter them. Oh, Lux!
Oh, Lux with the final spark. Here comes the Super Mega Death Rocket just in case the first long-range execute didn't hit. But Choker's still hanging around in FM's jungle.
They are. Samwise is chasing though.
He's chasing onto Numlock. He's dropping low, but Zodiac and the cavalry is right behind him. But that cavalry is AP and doesn't have any mana, so he will be sticking alive for now, using the ultimate on himself. Chewed Up just taking this time to farm bottom lane.
Yeah, and that's a 90-second cooldown on the ultimate at this point, so that's only just going to be back up if the team fight is after the dragon spawns. Alchemist is getting chased down by Samwise.
Yeah, and behind him is Billy Fufu, able to get that speed of course, with that tailwind passive. Tundra in the bottom lane though. Chewed Up has stuck around for too long, and he'll be detonated by Tundra's combo.
Good readout by FM to realize that Chewed Up is just sitting in that bottom lane, farming away. Look at his CS right now. He's on par for about 10 a minute right now. And that is a good spot to be in on a Jinx. He's already got 2 items completed. Samwise's items we talked about in the pre-game. When he goes for this Muramana, it's building for a little bit of a later game using that stacking item, so he can't actually compare to the damage that Jinx has right now with the Static Shiv and an Infinity Edge. Given the attack speed that comes from the passive of Jinx as well, that is so much damage on Chewed Up, but if he's not in the fight, he's not really having an effect.
Yeah, I mean, also, let's take a look at the Medjais, because he's currently on 10 stacks here, so it's still efficient. He hasn't been dying, hasn't been feeling the effect, because of course now if you die, you lose half of your stacks, as opposed to 1/3, so there's definitely a high risk, high reward item, and Chriso is not very lucky in this exchange. He will be caught out in the middle lane, and again, it is FM being caught when they are behind, and again, Billy Fufu will probably find himself underneath the same fate. Soul Shackles will proc, and will be landing the Monsoon, but it doesn't matter when you're light bound, and you will get 2-0'd. Again, the Super Mega Death Rocket comes in for good measure.
Dan could do nothing there to help Billy Fufu because Zodiac with the Black Shield on himself meant that there was no disengage to be had. And CHK going to split up around the map and take Dragon and try and push the turret. It's a little bit early on the Ezreal ult, but good attempt nonetheless. CHK's composition, what it is so good at doing is punishing the positional errors that FM are making. And FM are making quite a lot. At this point in the game, they should be starting to utilize their composition, utilizing the poke, but they're split up, and from that, CHK are very easy, very capable of just taking one person away, and from that, FM just don't have the numbers, they don't have the damage.
I mean, just look at that turret, how fast it died from Chudok's Pow Pow minigun, using that switcheroo on his Q. And this is really starting to punish FM, as you mentioned, Stress. And constantly, when they're behind, they start making sloppy decisions. When they're ahead, they run away with the game. Yes, they get caught here and there, but when they're behind, they just can't seem to focus themselves. And the bottom turret is slowly being chunked down. Billy is mitigating some of that, but the tower is slowly starting to get chipped away. Tundra does have the ultimate, but Lasagna is pushing the middle lane as well.
Yeah, Tundra's off pushing up in the top lane, and outer tower for an inner is not exactly worth it at this point in the game, and Tundra's not a big enough threat for CHK actually to turn around and deal with, but they don't feel confident enough pushing into an inhibitor tower. And it looks like they just want to set their waves up, back away, and head back for buying some items.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at the gold right now, they are 1,000 on pretty much everyone. Pantheon is basically there and has gone back as well, so they have a fair chunk of change to spend. So we'll be doing that right now before recollecting themselves and congregating around a new area. Most likely you're probably going to see a top lane push here, because that's the only inner turret that is still left standing. But regardless, Dan, this time, has his focus on those crabs this game, has been taking those away. And Lasagna has not been able to get those speed shrines up. It hasn't helped them all that much, though, as they are having to sit in their base. That is their home right now.
Yeah, they've pushed out, though, which was the problem that we saw CHK fall to in the last game. But Pantheon Ultimate is coming to top.
The Grand Skyfall lands right on top of Tundra's head. He will be backing off using that Maelstrom, but oh, the binding comes across, but it's actually not enough to teleport away, is what I mean. They were able to take him out before he was able to get that teleport off. And now FM will be pushing down the middle lane, but this is 4 versus 5. Nolog has a teleport as well, but this may be a great positional play. They should be able to take this away before they go in for this engage. But Billy Fufu is caught out on the way out. In comes the ultimate. Oh, here comes also Chudok's ultimate as well. But Samwise drops, Chriso drops, and they just get collapsed upon. They stuck around for too long, and they just should have let him die. But they back away and they get 5-0 clean aced.
Heading for the Baron now, but FM just stayed too long in front of the tower even. As soon as Tundra was killed up in the top lane, you can see this is the tail end of the fight. Lasagna had already positioned through into the middle lane. Didn't even need his ult, he didn't have it at that point either, and CHK just cleaned that fight up completely. They have taken Baron as the replay was running, but I don't know what FM were actually trying to achieve there, because there was no way they were getting that tower down without taking a lot of losses from that situation.
It seems just like a lot of indecision here, and it's been happening more and more as we progress through this series, and you just have to feel it's wearing down on them. Every bad decision, it just feels like the communication right now, as you look across the player cams, no one's talking. They're just sitting in their own lanes, doing their own thing. There's pretty much no communication.
And they're going to need a strong voice to get them back into this game. But Chriso
comes in and gets man-dropped by Lasagna. Will be following through. Again, here comes a Super Mega Death Rocket. This one claims the kill. Chriso gets caught out, and this is disastrous. They're not able to put up a defense. Middle turret goes down. They'll be going for the inhibitor.
Yeah, with the Baroned up minions as well. I wonder, their wave clear is now severely lacking from FM, and Tundra's not even there. They're going to look to push into a Nexus turret because there's nothing there to clear.
And they just get died. This is going to be the end of the game here, Stress, as Lasagna claims another one. Chiming in will be chewed up to claim the kill. 2-0. Now moving on to the Nexus turrets themselves. And FM are literally falling over and collapsing. This has been a one-sided affair in this third game of this series, and they won't just be punishing them even further. They're actually just stopping finishing the game to kill them over and over again, pad their stats out, and make sure they have that demoralizing effect on FM as we head into our fourth game now of this best of 5.
Man, that was a one-sided game right from minute number 1. Dan getting caught out right at the beginning of the game. And Choke never looked back from that moment. Choke just continued to get picks. FM were just out of position a couple of times, and Choke just capitalized. And that composition, you look at 2 long-range stuns out of Lux and Morgana. Trying to escape from that, you're instantly stun-locked.
Right, if you could describe this game in the word, it would be capitalize, and that's exactly what Choke did. Well, we're going to send it over to the analyst desk to break down this game in greater detail.
Thanks a lot once again, guys, and wow. Choke Gaming now up 2-1 to FM eSports. And again, they just snowballed it. Medjai's first item on Lux is a very risky buy, but he ended with well over 15 stacks. So clearly went well for him. Explain to me exactly how then, because the junglers this time around were much more evenly matched in the early game. We saw so many crazy invades. So what really allowed Choke to take control?
Well, it's what we see from Choke a lot of the time. They like to pick people off, and as soon as you give Zodiac Morgana, as soon as you get Alchemist on that Lux as well, Dark Binding into Light Binding, into Pantheon Stun, and you just got one person locked out of the team fight immediately. Choke are so good at getting people out of position, getting ward coverage around flanking areas as well, and then picking people off.
I mean, last game we talked about how they struggled with having almost no hard CC at that point. Now they bring out 3. They bring out Pantheon Stun, Lux Bindings, and Morgana Dark Bindings as well. With those 3 CCs, you saw they got first blood just from that. They land 1 in CC, chain it. When that runs out, chain it into another one, and that's first blood. And that happens so many times within that game. And it's also depending on, it just shows how much influence the jungler has in the early game. Both of these teams have really aggressive junglers, and it depends which one gets ahead.
So this is a little bit more of a personal question. Is Lux coming back? Because she's an awesome champion, and I really hope she's viable again. So why was she picked?
Lux is almost like another Xerath. It's almost towards DX's playstyle. It's a safe champion who can farm safe, it farms far away. It has poke, and that ult, when you hit level 6, you can choose to use it aggressively. For example, if you land a binding ult combo, it almost guarantees a almost 100%, but it's usually 80 around level 6. That's why you see DX picking up the Medjais. It's such a good snowball item. I mean, with Lux, you're so far back, you don't really need to be anywhere in danger. It's exactly the same as Xerath.
I think we were a bit worried about the Medjais after he died, like just after getting it, got a kill and then died, but it shows how safe you can be on a Lux. Like it is exactly like playing a Xerath. You've got long range poke, you've got the ability just to stay safe, and Alchemist loves Lux and is very good on her as well.
However, FM kept falling prey to this hard CC, to the bindings from both Lux and Morgana, to the long range crowd control, and to Pantheon ults. Is it a vision problem? Why do they keep getting caught?
FM have a storied history of being able to win if they get to the late game, but if they start losing out in the early game, they're not very good at understanding where the enemy team might be and then positioning themselves accordingly. They do get caught out a lot, especially as they come back through their own jungle going towards a tower. For example, we saw Choke, they'd push through mid lane, go into the inner tower a couple of times, and then FM would funnel in from the sides rather than going back round the back.
If they're not coming in through the same lane, or if they're coming from different angles, Choke just go, okay, let's focus on this angle, and let's shift all our positions closer to the safety from that one side. If it's a 3 on one side, like let's say 3 FM members on the left, 2 on the right, Choke will focus all onto the right, pick off that one person, and then there's only one person to deal with. And once they deal with those 2 people, it's a 5v3.
So, that's game 3. CHK Gaming, of course, now up 2-1 to FM eSports. We're going to run to another quick break, and when we come back, we'll have game number 4 in this exciting best of 5.